The Preston Industries executive boardroom fell silent as Olivia Preston finished her presentation, her perfectly manicured finger pointing directly at me. And that's why Isabella Carter can't possibly continue as our finance director. Someone who grew up on food stamps and charity handouts simply doesn't understand the sophistication required to handle billion-dollar accounts. I sat quietly, my expression neutral despite the burning in my chest. 2 months ago, Olivia had become CEO of Preston Industries after her father promoted her. It had taken her exactly 3 weeks to dig up my past and start a campaign to remove me. My phone buzzed silently in my pocket. Probably another message from Wells Fargo about the Turner Group acquisition, but I couldn't check it now. Not with every executive in the room staring at me like I was a charity case who'd somehow snuck into their exclusive club. Isabella, Charles Preston, our CEO and Olivia's father, leaned forward. Would you care to respond to these concerns? I adjusted my simple black blazer, a stark contrast to the Armani accessories adorning the rest of the room. My division's performance speaks for itself. We've increased profitability by 47% since I took over 3 years ago. Olivia's laugh was like cut glass. Anyone can get lucky with a few good quarters. But the Turner Group merger requires a certain pedigree. Someone who understands old money, old traditions. She smiled, all perfect teeth and practiced charm. Someone who didn't have to rely on scholarship handouts to attend business school. The room shifted uncomfortably. My background had always been an open secret at Preston Industries. The poor girl who'd climbed her way up from nothing, worked through college stocking shelves at night, earned her MBA on scholarships and merit awards. Until now, it had been seen as admirable. But Olivia was rewriting the narrative. The Turner Group, she continued, clicking to her next slide, represents the largest luxury retail chain in Asia. They expect a certain caliber of leadership, not someone who used to pack boxes at food banks. What Olivia didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I hadn't just packed boxes at the local food bank. I'd also befriended the elderly volunteer who worked there every Tuesday. A quiet man named Thomas Turner, the same Thomas Turner who had founded the Turner Group 50 years ago and who still controlled 51% of the company's shares. My phone buzzed again. The Wells Fargo team was probably getting anxious. After all, they'd been working for months on this deal, helping me quietly acquire a controlling interest in Preston Industries' biggest client through a series of shell companies. I move that we reassign the Turner Group negotiations to someone more suitable, Olivia concluded. Someone who can properly represent the Preston name. Charles Preston nodded thoughtfully. Isabella, you've done good work here, but Olivia raises valid points. Perhaps it's time for a change in leadership. I stood slowly, straightening my jacket. Before you make that decision, you might want to check your emails. I believe Wells Fargo has some relevant information about the Turner Group. Olivia's perfectly sculpted eyebrows drew together. What are you talking about? If you'll excuse me, I gathered my papers calmly. I have a meeting with Thomas Turner in 20 minutes. We have some interesting matters to discuss about the future of both our companies. The confusion on their faces was just beginning to turn to concern as I walked out. Behind me, phones started buzzing as the Wells Fargo announcement hit their inboxes. I could almost hear Olivia's sharp intake of breath as she read the news. Turner increases stake to 60% in Preston Industries. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about proving people wrong. It's about letting them discover just how wrong they were, all by themselves. And Olivia Preston was about to discover just how wrong she could be. The next morning, Preston Industries' lobby was in chaos. News crews camped outside, shareholders demanded answers, and Olivia Preston's perfectly curated world was crumbling. I sat in my modest office, reviewing the morning headlines. Preston Industries stands by CEO amid power struggles. Wall Street giants seize control in power play. My phone lit up. Thomas Turner was calling. Isabella, my dear, his warm voice brought me back to those Tuesday afternoons at the food bank, learning about business and life while we packed boxes for families like mine had once been. I assume they've realized by now. The announcement just hit, I replied. Their emergency board meeting starts in an hour, and they still don't know you're behind it. I smiled, watching through my office windows as Olivia stormed past, her designer heels clicking frantically on the marble floors. Not yet, but they will. The last 12 hours had been entertaining, to say the least. After I had left the boardroom yesterday, Olivia had apparently tried calling every contact she had at Turner Group, only to discover her old money connections didn't actually know anyone in real power there. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Sarah Foster, my old friend from business school, who now headed our legal department. "Isabella," she whispered. "You need to see this. Olivia's trying to push through an emergency resolution to remove you before the board meeting. She's claiming you violated company policy by not disclosing personal connections to Turner Group." I checked my watch. Let her try. How's the rest of the team? Shocked, scared, excited. Everyone who's ever been talked down to by Olivia is watching this like their favorite drama series. Tell them not to worry. Just make sure everyone's in the boardroom at 10 a.m. At exactly 9:55, I gathered my files and headed to the executive floor. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Board members huddled in corners, whispering urgently. Olivia stood with her father, both their faces pale as they read something on a tablet. "This is impossible," I heard her hiss. "The shell companies, the secret acquisitions. It would have taken years of planning. 5 years to be exact," I said quietly, as I passed them. "About as long as I've been running your entire financial operation." The color drained from Olivia's face as the pieces started clicking into place. Charles Preston grabbed my arm. "What have you done?" "I simply helped Thomas Turner diversify his investments." I glanced at Olivia. "Everything else," I glanced at Olivia, "was your daughter's doing." The boardroom was packed, not just with executives but with representatives from every department. Olivia had always insisted on having an audience for her power plays. Today, she'd get one. Before we begin, I set my files on the table. "I believe Miss Preston has a resolution she'd like to present." Olivia straightened, clutching her folder like a shield. "Yes. Due to Ms. Carter's undisclosed conflict of interest." "You mean my volunteer work at a food bank?" I interrupted mildly. "The same food bank where I met Thomas Turner, who became my mentor and friend, while your family was busy judging people based on their bank accounts." "This isn't about," she started, but I was already pulling up documents on the main screen. "Actually, it is. Let's talk about conflicts of interest, Olivia. Like how you've been selling company information to competitors, how you've used corporate funds for personal expenses, how you falsified your resume to get this position." The room erupted in whispers. Charles Preston's face turned an interesting shade of gray. "You can't prove," Olivia's voice cracked. "I can prove everything," I said quietly. "I've been proving things my whole life. To scholarship committees, to professors, to employers, to people like you who thought growing up poor meant I couldn't possibly understand sophistication." I turned to address the board. "Thomas Turner is on his way here now. As majority shareholder, he has some interesting plans for Preston Industries' future. Plans that don't include nepotism or discrimination." Olivia's designer purse slipped from her fingers, spilling its contents across the floor as she scrambled to pick up her scattered belongings. I couldn't help but notice the labels were fake. Sometimes the most expensive things in life are the lies we tell ourselves about who we are, I said quietly. The silence in the boardroom was deafening as Thomas Turner walked in, looking exactly as he had at the food bank. Comfortable slacks, a well-worn sweater, and the kind smile that had helped me believe in myself when I had nothing. "Sorry I'm late," he said cheerfully, seeming oblivious to the tension. "Traffic was terrible, though not as terrible as some of the financial reports I've been reading." Olivia, who had finally gathered her scattered belongings, tried to recover. "Mr. Turner, there's clearly been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Thomas cut in, his voice suddenly sharp, "is that you thought wealth was about designer labels and family names. Real wealth, Miss Preston, is about creating value. Something Isabella understood even when she was packing boxes at my food bank." Charles Preston found his voice. "Now see here." "Turner," I interrupted, pulling up more financial data. "Preston Industries isn't just over-leveraged. It's technically insolvent." The only thing keeping your creditors at bay was the promised Turner Group merger. A merger Olivia's discriminatory policies nearly destroyed, but Thomas smiled. Isabella has proposed a restructuring plan that could save everything. Well, almost everything. What does that mean? Charles demanded. It means, I stood up, Preston Industries will survive, but with new leadership. A meritocracy, not a monarchy. Olivia laughed desperately. You can't be serious. You're going to let this charity case run our company? No, Thomas replied calmly. I'm going to let the brilliant financial strategist who turned my $100 million investment into a $4 billion acquisition run our company. The fact that she also understands the value of helping. The next hour was a blur of legal documents and board votes. By lunch, Preston Industries had a new CEO, and Olivia and Charles Preston had been escorted from the building as security cleared out their offices. I found something interesting on Olivia's computer, a folder of surveillance photos she'd had me followed for months, documenting my weekly visits to the food bank. She thought she was gathering evidence against you, Sarah noted, looking over my shoulder. Instead, she was documenting your character. I closed the folder. Have her personal items donated to the food bank. Seems fitting. Later that evening, as the dust settled, I sat with Thomas in my old office. I decided not to take the executive suite. Some habits of modesty stick with you. You could have told them years ago. Thomas mused about our relationship, about your role in Turner Group's success. Would it have changed who they were? I asked. They needed to learn the lesson themselves. And did they learn it? I showed him my phone. Olivia had just posted a bitter social media rant about unqualified diversity hires destroying her family's legacy. Thomas chuckled. Some people never learn, but others. He gestured to the office windows where employees were celebrating the company's new direction. Others just need a chance to see things differently. The next morning, I called my first company-wide meeting. The changes would be significant. Merit-based promotions, educational support programs, comprehensive benefits including food security assistance. Preston Industries is becoming Carter Global, I announced. Not because I want to erase the past, but because we need to build a different future. As I outlined the changes, I noticed something. People weren't just listening, they were hoping. For many, it was the first time they'd seen someone like them. Someone who knew struggle, who understood hardship, in a position of real power. 1 year later, Carter Global was featured in Forbes. From Food Bank to Fortune 500. How Isabella Carter revolutionized corporate culture. The article mentioned that every Tuesday afternoon, the CEO still volunteers at his local food bank. Some habits, after all, are worth keeping. Olivia Preston now works as a junior analyst at a small firm. She's still learning what it means to earn respect, and she'll likely never truly understand how it feels to create a legacy built on substance, not status.